I'm Frank Spillers, and I'm the Chief Experience Officer of Experience Dynamics. I founded the company 20 years ago. I've been in this field for 25 years, starting out with virtual reality. And I'm happy to share my thoughts and insights and some tips and some learnings and lessons, and always been inspired over the years by wisdom and by nuggets, like bits of gold that you can take into your practice, that you can share with your colleagues, or things that I've learned along the way. And so I'm happy to share this, and you can check out my website, experiencedynamics.com. I've also set up a mentoring community at uxinnercircle.com. It's my UX Inner Circle, and I'm sharing my lessons and learnings there as well. So I hope you can join me, and I hope you enjoy all the content on AntLock.
Can you tell us a little about your background? How did you get into UX domain?
Yeah, how I got into the UX domain is in the early 1990s, when I kind of came out of school and was going into college. I saw and heard about virtual reality technology, and I was actually really fascinated by the potential of virtual reality technology, and that led me to study it. And then I did a master's degree in collaborative virtual environments, what we call social VR today. And the usability, I realized I was in the bleeding edge in the 90s. That was really the edge of technology, what we call today, emerging technologies like AI and VR, AR, and blockchain and so forth. But in the 90s, that was like that bleeding edge. And I realized that it doesn't matter if the technology is cool or fascinating, it had to be usable. So I learned about usability, and I learned about what we call UX today, and that's how I got into it. Unfortunately, that whole field went into this kind of period of the industry went into like a freeze. And so I moved to California, to Silicon Valley in Southern California, and I worked with one of the best students of Dr. Donald Norman, the grandfather of user-centered design. And I got into the field with kind of corporate web applications and websites, and then later into mobile products, services, and so forth. And that's how I got into the field.
So what kind of attitude and behavioral qualities do you look for while hiring a UX fresher?
So the kind of attitudes and qualities that I look for when hiring a UX designer that's new, or a junior UX designer as we call them, is the most important quality actually is curiosity and a focus or an obsession, if you will, about humans, not the technology. These are the most important qualities, and I'll tell you why. The first one, curiosity. I was interviewing this fresher, or this junior UX woman who looked really good on her CV. It looked great. She was even from a Latin American background, which for me was a plus, because she maybe bringing in this fresh perspective in the United States as a Latin American UX designer. And so I called her for an interview, and I asked her about fitness tracking. And at the time, Fitbit was very popular in America, and the UIs, the experience for onboarding with these fitness devices, was actually quite interesting. So much so that I was using that in other applications, like in education and other places. The design and the sort of like engagement. And I asked her what she thought about fitness trackers, and she made a comment like, "Oh, that I wouldn't use the fitness trackers," or she was very dismissive. And I didn't say anything, because I actually I used a fitness tracker for 1 year, kind of, and also did some studies with users. But this is a mistake, is to be attached to a technology and to dismiss it wholeheartedly, unless you have a really good idea for dismissing the technology, you know? If you know that it's something destructive and harmful for users or bad for people, then dismiss it. But it's important to keep a curiosity, because it doesn't matter what you think, it matters what users think and feel and act and how they behave with the new technology. You know, so robots, how are we going to get robots on, you know, people are very suspicious of robots. I personally, as a designer, don't care about robots, but that's not important. What's important if I'm designing a robot is what the users feel comfortable with, their intimacy, their privacy, and so forth, right? So that's the first one. The second one is the obsession about humans. You hear it in those stories. The user, as a UX person, you're a user advocate. So it's important that you, even though you may have a technology background, you may have a computer science degree background, you know, you're a technologist because, you know, you're designing technology. Maybe you were a developer before, and you're coming into UX. Maybe you're a graphic designer, visual designer, and you're coming into UX from the like art side. But if you're not obsessing about the humans, you're going to get lost because the technologies change. And the main job of a UX designer is to advocate for the user, for the human in that equation. And if it's important for you to see this human and computer, or this human and what we call the system, right? We talk so much about system, the database, the system, the computer, the system. But really, the skill that even I'm learning now, I've been thinking about systems thinking. Systems thinking is a term from engineering and mechanical engineering. They use it, and other types of engineering, and it's about considering the whole, the totality, right? But when we think about computers and users, we don't think of them as a system. We think about the system, but we don't think about the system of this interaction between the human and the computer or the mobile or the AR, VR, IoT, AI, whatever it is. We don't think about that totality. We think about developing. It's all about dev, right? It's about developing the system, making the system user-friendly. But really, if you as a fresher, if you start thinking in systems terms, as in systems thinking, that when you come to design things like services, right? So what you say, well, I'm not into service, I design products. Services are very important to think in systems, because we are now in a place, like Steve Jobs said this, and many other leaders have said this, that we are in a place where products and services have crossed over. And it's really the mobile, because now you can bring up any service on your mobile phone. The delivery guy brings you your food, whatever it is, you're able to do that. Well, to design for this situation, mobile plus a service, maybe there's customer service, there's social networking, there's the call center or the physical store you go into, they say hello, they give you, you pick up the order, whatever it is. That's you need a systems thinking perspective. You need to think holistically. So good UX designers, I look for good UX designers who think holistically, systems view, who are curious about technologies, but more what users do. And third of all, who obsess about users and really advocate and really focus on what it is about us humans when it comes to our interactions with technology. Not just what the technology, the system, the database, what that needs, right? So those are the three qualities I look for in hiring a fresher.
So what kind of preparation should a candidate follow in order to improve his or her design aptitude?
So a UX designer or someone who's looking for a UX job really needs to prepare in the following ways. First of all, one of the most important places where you learn about good UX is from observing users. So again, it's going back to an obsession about users, a advocacy of users. So that means that if you can prepare a good portfolio, that's obviously important, right? Maybe you already know that. Prepare a good portfolio. The portfolio, though, a good portfolio is not just a beautiful UI or visual design. Sure, that's important, but how you make a decision about that UI and UI design comes from a story, and that story comes from a user. So if you can do user research, some kind of user testing, if you can do user observations. I mean, one of the first user interviews that I did, it was actually for a very popular music application. This is before the days of streaming music. And one of the things that I did was I went to a place that sold music, like a record store, or a store that sold like music. This is before streaming audio. I went to that place and stopped people and asked them. And I said, can I just talk to you about, your music and your habits and so forth? So you can just go to a place where the thing that you're studying or, even, for example, designing for social distancing, designing for COVID, for example, how would you study that? Well, you can't talk to people, whatever. You can go with a mask, you can use precautions, you can stand a meter away, and you can ask them some questions. How's your experience in that shop? How are you treated? What kinds of things do you expect? What has been your experiences with social distancing and COVID? What are some challenges? They'll say things like, oh, I don't know what to do. I go in the shop, I don't know what they want from me, So these are really important user requirements. So if you can demonstrate that you have some skills in user research, that's a very, very important for a proper UX design job. If you're just looking for visual design, then yeah, sure, you need a beautiful portfolio. But the case studies and the change that happens with UIs and UX comes from how users actually use it. So if you can have some user testing, some field research, some user interviews that you've done, then that would be a very positive thing for you to prepare and also improve your aptitude, improve your ability to really get UX, which is about user behavior.
So how do you know that including AR technology will improve your users' experience with the product? Could you elaborate on the key aspects to be considered to include AR in product design?
Yeah, think about AR as a feature, and all features need a place. They need a purpose, right? So augmenting somebody's reality on a mobile device, that we have AR on mobile devices, right? Augmenting someone's reality. Why are you doing it, first of all? What is the use case or the problem you're trying to solve? So that means understanding a little bit about the users who are going to use this AR. Do they know AR? How comfortable are they with AR? So it's really examining your users' experiences, their current behaviors, apps they use, experiences that they like in AR. But I think you also need to do your own research with AR and VR, mixed reality, right? And you need to learn what works and what doesn't work. So create little experiments, do your own proof of concept, your own demos, and give them to a user or two if you can, to kind of work with you and play with you. There's a lot of play that's required in AR, VR, or mixed reality design. And I mean prototyping, so walking around. One of the things that you need to do when you're doing this kind of spatial prototyping for these spatial interfaces or these immersive medias, right, AR, is to, walk around the space. So, if you design something that's going to be used in a city, and you're, for example, on a city street, go to a city street and take your prototype and try and use it yourself and see what obstacles, you're about to kill some, someone might run you over, right? One of the funniest stories I heard with Google Glass. Google Glass was Google's failure, right? With early kind of like heads-up display, the little thing that comes down. And there was a journalist, he was writing about it, his wife and him, they tried to, evaluate it for like a week or two. And he said that the first thing he did when he walked outside of his house is he stepped in some dog shit, and because he didn't realize, he was looking up and he didn't realize what he stepped on. The woman said they wanted to be enthusiastic. They were like basically writing a glorified, a happy story for Google promotion. These are the days when Sergey Brin was wearing his Google Glass and acting like it was a normal thing. And so a lot of things to learn from that, right? Obviously the privacy, getting the feature of recording things without someone knowing, that's a bad feature. So why? What is it doing for the user? What are the benefits? The woman went into the store and she lost her child because she was pulling up a recipe or reading her email, and her child went running around the store, and she was like, "Where's my kids?" Like social effects, environmental effects, emotional effects. These are all important considerations when designing AR in AR products, or incorporating AR as a feature in your product or your app experience. So that's where it really starts, and it's important not to get, again, too excited by the technology, but to ground it and bring it to the need that it's helping the user fulfill.
So how do you teach your users about each AR interaction on your products? So how do you make the learning process more easier?
So, one of the things about all technologies is that you don't want to approach your design with that attitude of teaching the users, or the users having to learn, or that the users are like children, or they're stupid, or that you assume they don't know what they're doing, and so they need instructions, they need help, they need some type of thing like that. So that's really important, because if you design with that assumption, you're going to end up with an experience that's all about like teaching them. They're going to miss the whole experience because they're going to be so busy trying to figure out. It's like when we saw people starting to use webinars or Zooms, or starting to use these things, these new technologies. They're spending so much time. It's the same with VR. You spend so much time trying to figure it out that you miss the whole point of being there or doing the thing. So it's important to make that learning curve like really flat, like really like quick. And you have basically 30 seconds. It's that first 30-second experience. So if they don't, you have 30 seconds for this onboarding, for this introduction. They need to know right away. So you can use like some cues beforehand, before they even touch the app. Show them a video of somebody using it, how it works. This is one of Apple's tricks, is they do like pre-teaching, like before, pre-exposure. Even in their public relations, in their introductory videos, they have people using the app, or at their developer conferences, they use hold up the phone or whatever it is and show you how it's used. It's important, again, that your instructions are very low. If there are instructions, they just need to be so simple. So the approach of the design needs, instead of instructions and a help type of framing of this problem, think about it more like play, like discovery, like unfolding. So the onboarding has to just be part of the story, part of the interaction. Think of it like the keys drop into your hand, come out of the sky and drop into your hand. Oh, what's this? These are the keys. Oh, if they're the goals of the game, if it's a game, or the goals of the experience, have a little sign come up. The first goal, they can read it. The next goal comes up, and then an arrow kind of points, towards whatever the direction you want them to go in. You also need to look at experiences that have been successful, like Pokemon was a successful kind of outdoor experience. We're talking about AR. So today's AR, just to be clear, we're talking about the meshing of the physical environmental space that exists with the user, right? So it's spatial detection in the AR technologies, and the Google Apple kits that you'll probably be developing with. So to be clear, we're talking about that. And so looking at these, like I said, the outdoor spaces, make sure someone's not getting run over by a car or stepping in the dog doo-doo or losing their children and all these other kinds of effects we talked about. But fast, quick, simple onboarding, not requiring too much learning. Make it like a game, make it playful, and unfold, just as part of the story instead of the instructions and the fiddling about with the features and the controls and the UIs. We definitely need to get away from all that fiddling with this technology, or it will never be adopted in the mass way that we want it to.
So how do you know if your AR product has a good usability to give your users a seamless experience on your product?
Yeah, so it's really important when you're testing the usability of anything, especially AR or VR. It's important that you test with users. So, play testing is a game-based way, and so you can think about it the same way: play testing or user testing. So that's the most important way to assess usability. Usability being, is it easy? Is it, did they have to stop and learn? Was it clear? Was it fun? Was the goal of the product or the game or the experience that you're creating, was it successful from the user standpoint? Was it engaging? Did they get involved? Were they for me, AR, it's got to be like, wow, this is so cool. I don't want to turn it off. I want to keep this going. Instead of like the AR where you hold it, you're like, oh yeah, okay, that's interesting. And then, so that's not a good outcome. So assessing that engagement or that emotional impact of the AR experience is so important. And you can do that with user testing or play testing.
So how does user wants and user needs differ? So how do you manage to know user needs when sometimes they themselves aren't clear about it?
Yeah, this is like a really important question. How do you manage user wants versus what they really need? And also, if they don't know what they need, if they're not clear, how do you manage their needs? So to be clear, if you ask users, if you just like a market research, if you do a survey or focus group, or just ask a user, do you like this feature? Will you use this feature? Do you want some AR? Do you want some, do you like this settings control, or you like this filter, or whatever it is? You're likely to get a whole bunch of opinions. And in UX, we don't really care about opinions. We care about behaviors, how they actually will use it, how they will adopt it when you're not there, when, like I say, when it hits the street, when they take it away from your nice fancy office or your research lab or whatever it is, and they go out into the street, how are they really going to use it, And how you figure that out is by doing user research, ethnography, field studies, and contextual inquiry. These are the terms we use in UX, but essentially you're spending time with users, observing, interviewing, talking to them. Now they'll tell you what they may say, yeah, I really I love this fast car. It's really great, and I like this fast motorcycle, like that speed, it's really just zooming around. And what you're going to ask, you write that down, but you're not going to follow the orders likes the speed and then go and make something fast. What you want to know is why. What are they doing? Where are they going? Why is it that you want something fast? What are you doing? Tell me about your normal day, week, and month. How do you travel? Well, I take the train. Okay, why do you take the train? Well, because I have to go 2 different stops and there's too much traffic, so I leave my car or bike at home. Also, I want to save the planet. Oh, okay. So what would having a fast car do for you? Well, then I can show it. I can show it to my friends. Where do you show it to your friends? Well, I can't really show it to them because they live in different cities, and they're all online anyway with the COVID, and I can't really use it anyway. Oh, okay. So now we understand more what they really need. What do they really need? Maybe after the interview it comes down to, an app on their, for travel that tells them when the fastest train is coming. Like in Korea, for example, in South Korea, they have two apps. One is for the foreigners or the Korean Americans who've moved back to Seoul. The other one is for the native, Koreans. And for the native Koreans, because speed is such an important requirement in the culture, actually, and everyone, values speed. They tell you what the fastest exit is, and some of these big subway stations have so many exits. So that's an example of how a feature might translate to what they really need. And the guy tells you he doesn't even use a car or the bike for these reasons. And let's talk about your train. How can we improve that? Well, I'm always late for work because I like to watch TED Talks in the morning or whatever. I always get late for work, right? So really understanding their needs. I like to say, this is one way I used to, in my UX trainings, for years I said, it's like a mother who knows what her child needs. If your child says to you, I want more sweets, you'll be a bad parent if you just give the user, your child, the sweets. If you understand the context of their eating habits and of their sweet tooth, you say, nah, you just had a chocolate or a candy. You've had two now. You need to eat some vegetables. You need some balance now. It's time for you to eat the vegetables. And the child's going to say, I don't like that. But as a mother, you know what they need. So that's what we do in UX design. We interpret, we advocate, we listen deeply, obsess about the user, we advocate, we interpret their needs like a mother. So I like to say, be the mother as a UX designer. And that's how you can tell the difference between their needs and their, what they say they want or what they think they want or whatever trend or opinion, be the mother.
So, what approach do you make to understand the user requirements better? Can you elaborate on some methods or practices that you use in this case?
Yes, so the correct approach for understanding user requirements, first of all, is not just what your boss thinks or what the business team thinks. That's the biggest mistake that I've seen over the last 20 years in American corporations, but everybody makes that mistake. So we understand our users. We've decided we're the business. That's what business teams do. They decide. That's what owners and bosses do. That's what product owners do. They decide, product managers. But if you don't balance your assumptions with what's really going on out on the street, in terms of real user behavior, that's a big problem. That's a recipe for failure. So validating user requirements. How do you understand and validate user requirements? The technique in UX is user research. User research has user testing and it has field research. User testing is there once the product is ready or the prototype to test, is it easy to use? The field research earlier on goes out and examines what is it that this user is doing? What are our users doing? Why are they doing it? When are they doing it? With whom are they doing it? What steps do they take? What goals and problems and tasks do they have? What are the things that we saw them struggling with, that maybe they didn't even tell us? So those observations, we call them ethnography, user interviews, qualitative, day in the life, chair side, walk in my shoes. These are other terms for this. Contextual interviews, contextual inquiry is another term. Task analysis is another term. I invented a technique, a combination of these called cognitive archaeology, where you examine their task, trying to understand their values and beliefs that are operating on those tasks and goals, so that you can more connect deeply to what's important to them as well. So those are the techniques, and they're called user research, or they're what they're calling UXR, user experience research, or what research ops and design ops and research ops will have user research. So really important that you formalize that, you do it properly. If you do sloppy or poor user research, you're going to end up with poor insights that are not validated properly. They're not objective, and they don't challenge the internal assumptions, and they're just phony or fake. So you don't want that. You want to do proper listening, observing, and deep diving in.
So what to do when the business objectives and the user objectives don't meet? So how can this approach, this conflict be minimized?
So all of UX is about balancing user objectives and business objectives. And to balance those, usually the business objectives are the ones that are represented, they're on the table, they're understood. Maybe all the requirements are not fleshed out. Maybe they are. Maybe they've already, a business analyst has fleshed out the requirements. But it's the user objectives that are usually missing from the table. It's why Amazon reportedly puts like an empty chair in their meetings so people remember that the customer is present, and to advocate and to bring the voice of the customer there, to this meeting or this discussion. The way that you validate and bring in user objectives is through user research. User research is critical, and that has two sides. It's got user testing, it's got field research. Both of those elements, those sides of user research are important. One is the beginning, one is the end. And the field research is the way that you validate and bring in those user objectives. So at the end of the day, in Agile, we talk about user stories, but where do you get your stories from? Where do they come from? So the story needs to come from the users, from their mouth, from the horse's mouth. The stories, the day in their life, the emotional, social, functional way that they solve their problem, the challenges they have, the reason why they do this, the reason why they like that, the reason why they want that. That context is the way to bring that balance. And it's really part of good outside-in design thinking. Instead of inside out means we know here's our business objectives and we think these are our user objectives. Build it, and that's how a lot of people are doing software still to this day. That's a failed approach. That's inside out. That's crazy making. That says, I know everything about what you want and I can design it for you because I'm so wonderful. My God, that's a failed approach. I would never do that. Reminds me when I was cooking, I put too much chili in because I like to chili, and I made some like curries with lots too much chili. And my guest came over, this is in America, and some of them couldn't eat it. Like most of them, I made it too hot. I made it for my liking. I made it too hot, and they burned their mouth. My God, they were like, they're not used to chilies hot in America. They even sell chilies like jalapenos from Mexico, and they breed them without the heat. So you're buying like a green pepper with no heat, So that's a good reminder to me. Like always ask, even if you're cooking a meal for friends, find out what is their, do they like, too much salt, too little salt, garlic, no garlic, chili, no chili. What is their flavor? What do they like to eat? But of course, it's in our view, it's user objectives. We're talking about how will users actually behave. So there are companies that go out and explore just the space, like find out what your users are doing, find out what their values are, what their stories are, what's important to them, what their tasks are. Do that homework and then bring that, and that's the balancer. And that's all we want is a balance. Now, the question is, what happens when if they clash? What happens if you don't do proper user research or you don't go out and do that and the two clash? Sometimes the business objectives will eat the user objectives. Happens all the time, right? Sometimes happens because there's no time. The UX designer doesn't know how to do user research. The boss didn't let them. It's the COVID. There's a million excuses not to listen. Just put the chili in the damn curry, like it'll be fine. They'll eat it. Everybody eats that, But that approach is so risky. And so even if you can just do user testing, you can at least get some feedback from users to see if you're meeting their objectives. It's more strategic to do field studies up front. But, sometimes, to be honest, sometimes a product the objectives have to be pushed and eat the user objectives. The product ships and the product fails. Some managers need to learn from that. That's the whole fail fast, and learn quickly approach. A/B testing, of course, is a way that big companies like Google, for example, they just do testing on live code and see if it's meeting the marketing objective, right? And then if it isn't, then you say, let's say you ship something, it's live, then you're getting poor feedback from analytics, A/B testing, or you did some user research and the feedback was so-so. That's the chance to step back and say, what are we serving? We're making this thing, we're putting the chili, okay, that's the wrong feature, too much chili. What is it? What else is it? Oh, they don't even want this. They want something liquid because they're walking around. They are in a hurry. They're too busy. They don't have time to sit down and eat this thing. They need to eat it with one hand or with a mask because they've got COVID, and now they have to eat something with one hand. They can't use two hands, and our previous design required two hands, right? So, I'm just using like a real world analogy, but that's the time then to say, let's go back and explore and do it right next time. So it's a chance to learn. If you're in failure or have failed, you've got to learn from it and then change what you do the next time. That's how we learn. So, if you want to avoid the stupidity, then be proactive, do the upfront field research, do it properly, bring those insights to the design, and help the business team get the balance, and then you can test, ship, optimize, and see the value and the revenue coming from that.
So the first time experience is a make or break part of mobile apps. So how would you welcome the first users on your app, giving a positive and seamless experience to them?
So how would I welcome someone, do onboarding for mobile to make it seamless and to make it so that they adopt? It's so important with mobile. It's critical. And the reason is because majority of apps are uninstalled. Like after the first day, and then by 3 days, something like 82% of Android apps get uninstalled after the third day. And the following week, it even goes up to like 90 something percent. So there's a lot of, this is a huge issue. It's a huge problem. The way to address this is that you have to do user research with your mobile UX strategy. And by doing user research, you discover what is the most important task. That becomes the thing that you emphasize in your interaction design. You make that thing like that's the jewel. That's the golden, the shiny thing that they say, oh, that's what I want to do. That's the button. I push that button straight away. And so understanding what are feature priorities, and not just MVP, minimal viable product, but MDP, minimal desirable product. Again, that's the balance of user and business objective, is bringing the V, the viable, with the D, desirable. So don't just build something just because it's MVP and you're going to start doing this lean startup, that's our MVP approach. You want to make sure you get what the D is, and the D is going to help the user onboard quickly and adopt and keep the app, and so that's very important. Now, once you identify what that is, it's important with your app design that it's prioritized in the screen. When they open up the app, they're going to see the thing that they really want to do with your app. So example is like a QR code scanner. Right, so you open an app, there's a QR code. And right away the camera opens up straight away. That's the first thing. It's a little bit like designing for augmented reality, like the first 30-second experience. In mobile apps, it's like the first 10 seconds, really 5 to 10 seconds. If the user doesn't see their task, the thing that they need to do, that they want and they need to do, then it's going to be, they're going to have to look at all the buttons, look at all the menus, stop and think, do the onboarding, read this, read that. We don't want any thinking, no reading, no help, no instructions. Just boom, into the task. Take me to the task. Give me the jewel right away, And that's the approach that your interaction design for mobile, your UX design needs to follow. But remember, it got informed because you did your user research, you understood what users really wanted, you understood that it wasn't just the MVP you thought, it was an MDP, and that D was something that the users were missing or that they needed and it doesn't exist, and oh my god, that we never even thought of that. We have that feature, but it's the most important feature because there are these reasons, these stories that went into building the desire for that feature. And so that's the way to do it. And of course, testing and making sure, getting feedback on your app, doing follow-up testing once you launch, using a diary study. If you haven't used a diary study, for example, Norton Antivirus, they launched a new app, a privacy app. This privacy app, when you start the app, it confirms your phone number. It's part of their authentication and this privacy security kind of model. So you can see the thinking behind it, security model, IT model, validate the user, their phone number, check to make sure it's them, no imposters. And on this app, actually, you can use a different email and you can kind of hide your identity a little bit so that you're more invisible online. That's the benefit. So it's got some cool features actually once you get in. But we found like almost half of our users, actually over 56% of our users, were not even able to install because they were getting an error message. I even got the error message, said that my phone number is not me. And I was like, what is that? One of our users, the next day, she tried again, and then it was okay. And then she was able, but that hurdle, that decision, that feature is causing a lot of pain and a lot of user adoption. Norton doesn't even know about it, Norton Antivirus. I'm sure they don't. And if you do a diary study, you see these effects. You give the user the app to play with for a couple of weeks. They start playing with the app. They go, oh my God, what is this? I can't even use this. What's this? You can get some very quick and fast, and it's COVID research. You can do it all. It's all online. A diary's online and on the phone with the user. So that's a technique that I recommend that not enough people use. And it's all part of, once you launch, pay attention, make sure there are no issues with the experience that you just served up.
So what are the do's and don'ts to be followed while designing for first-time mobile experiences?
Yeah, so first-time mobile experience is this really important, that's the point where your user uninstalls or they keep going. And what's happened these days, what's happening is so many apps and so many mobile experiences that the expectation is much higher. So you need to connect, first of all, deeply with the user needs. Why are they using that app? What's the most important task that they want to perform? And then that should be the big button or the big, the search field right in the middle or whatever it is, or the, immediately you teleport into, if it's an AR app, for example, a door opens and the door then shows you, 3 or 4 icons of things that you can do, and something like that, right? So just immediate onboarding. There's too much time wasted and potential failure with setup and installation and onboarding, and look at the screen and look at the onboarding and look at the onboarding and look at the onboarding. And it's better to gamify and use some gamification if you're going to do that. Let the user play, let them test it. We had one of our clients was redesigning a VPN app. We did some user research for them. We discovered some new key priorities for the users, and it's things that users really liked on competitor apps, for example, just a big button to turn on and off the VPN, to know the VPN is on or off. Just that big slider button. So now in their app, they have that big slider button in the middle of the screen so that the user can turn on and off VPN, because VPN eats battery on a mobile phone. So there are reasons the users gave, but also just to have the control, the feeling of control. So that's the first thing you see. The other thing we found, users, for example, said that it just gave them Canada as the test server. This is for the 30-day trial or the free version, right? So it's important that free versions, actually our users are telling us now that they want fully featured free versions. So that's an important product decision. If you give like limited features, and I'm using an app just now, and I notice it's teasing me more features, but they're part of the Plus, the paid for version. And I don't really like that, because I don't even know if I haven't had a chance to fully use or to play with that feature. So it's important to know what your user expectations are. Again, points back to the importance of user research. Knowing if your users expect that, give them the fully featured 7-day free trial, and then user analytics, make sure that the user has had a chance to play. So many experiences these days, they give you 14-day trial or something. They send you the drip emails. Oh yeah, now it's day 3. Here's your thing. I hope everything's going great. And you're so busy, you haven't had it, or something happened. It doesn't work with your phone, blah, blah, blah. You haven't had a chance to play with it, and you've missed the trial period, and they're sending, oh, you probably use it by now. Good job. It's been 7 days. My God, everything's great. And you're thinking, I haven't even used the bloody thing. So connecting analytics, or some type of survey, some type of thumbs up, thumbs down. How's it going? How's your app use? Bad. I have an issue. I haven't been able to install it. It doesn't read my data. It doesn't pick up my location. It ruins my battery. Whatever. Finding out what those things are and removing that friction. So it's like the bumps on a road. You want the road to be smooth. You want it to be smooth for your users so that they're immediately onboarded within the first 5 to 10 seconds. They have the chance to opt out. It's gamified. They can see their first task. And it has the useful features that they want, that will cause them to adopt. Those are some of the important mechanisms in a first-time mobile user experience. They do apply with other experiences, but in mobile, it's much more focused because it's so easy to uninstall, and if you don't provide gratification, they're just out of there. They're just going to dump the app and look for a competitor or something. Go back to their old ways. So those are some of the important things on the first time touch.